Hello friends, and welcome to History Chronicles. In our previous episode, we explored the invasion of France by Nazi Germany and the rapid collapse of the French military. France fell, but its spirit did not. Today we'll dive deep into one of the most important, yet often overlooked aspects of World War II, the civilian resistance movements that took root in German-occupied France. While the Nazi regime imposed brutal control over much of the country, thousands of ordinary French citizens refused to submit. They risked their lives to resist the occupation, sabotage the enemy, and keep alive the hope of liberation. This is their story. Life under German occupation, a nation under siege. When German forces occupied northern France in June 1940, the people of France faced a new and oppressive reality. The Wehrmacht controlled the cities, and French citizens lived under constant fear of reprisal. The Nazis imposed harsh restrictions, including curfews, rationing, and the arrest of anyone suspected of harboring anti-German sentiments. French newspapers were censored, and radio broadcasts were tightly controlled by the occupying forces. This harsh regime, combined with a growing sense of national humiliation, ignited the spark of resistance among ordinary citizens. Though the initial reaction was one of shock and dismay, the resistance would grow into a powerful movement that challenged Nazi control and helped lay the groundwork for France's eventual liberation. The beginnings of civilian resistance, small acts of defiance. In the early days of the occupation, the resistance started small. Acts of defiance were often individual efforts, a refusal to salute a German officer, tearing down Nazi posters, or secretly listening to broadcasts from Radio Londres, which was operated by the French government in exile in Britain. One of the earliest resistance groups was Libération Nord, which formed in northern France in 1940. This group, like many others, began with the simple goal of providing moral support to fellow citizens and sharing information that countered Nazi propaganda. They distributed underground newspapers that defied German censorship, urging the French people not to lose hope. The rise of organized resistance networks. As the occupation continued, these small acts of defiance grew into more organized and coordinated resistance efforts. Resistance networks began to form, often with the support of the Free French Forces, led by General Charles de Gaulle from exile. These networks operated in secret, relying on code names, false identities, and underground safe houses to evade Nazi capture. One of the most famous groups was the France Terreur et Partisan, FTP, a communist resistance organization. The FTP specialized in sabotage and guerrilla warfare. They blew up railway lines, derailed German trains carrying troops and supplies, and carried out attacks on German soldiers. Meanwhile, another important group, Combat, was formed by Henri Frenay, a former French army officer. Combat focused on gathering intelligence and passing it on to the Allies. This group helped set up clandestine radio networks and provided crucial information that aided the Allied war effort. Sabotage and espionage, weapons of resistance. Sabotage became one of the primary tools of the French resistance. Railway lines were a favorite target, as the Nazis relied heavily on trains to transport troops and supplies across France. Resistance fighters would cut communication lines, derail trains, and damage critical infrastructure, disrupting the flow of German forces. Another key element of the resistance was espionage. Resistance fighters gathered intelligence on German troop movements, military installations, and supply depots. This information was passed on to the Allies through secret communication channels, providing vital intelligence that would eventually aid in the D-Day invasion. One particularly daring operation was carried out by a resistance network called Réseau Brutus. They infiltrated German headquarters in Paris and provided the Allies with detailed maps of German defenses along the French coast. This intelligence was critical in the planning of the Allied landings in Normandy in 1944. Women in the resistance, unsung heroes. Women played a crucial role in the French resistance, though their contributions are often overlooked in historical accounts. Many women worked as couriers, delivering messages between resistance groups, hiding arms, and sheltering fugitives. Others were directly involved in sabotage and armed resistance. One such woman was Lucy Aubrac, a schoolteacher who helped her husband, Raymond Aubrac, escape from a German prison in a daring operation. She later became one of the leaders of the Liberation Sud resistance group, organizing sabotage missions and helping to free captured resistance fighters. Another remarkable figure was Geneviève de Gaulle Anthonios, the niece of General Charles de Gaulle. She joined the Musée de l'Homme resistance group and was later captured and sent to the Ravensbrück concentration camp. Despite the hardships, she survived the war and continued to be a symbol of courage and resistance. The resistance intensifies, from small bands to a national movement. As the war dragged on, resistance efforts intensified. By 1943, the various resistance groups had begun to unify under the leadership of Jean Moulin, who had been appointed by Charles de Gaulle to coordinate the resistance. Moulin successfully brought together groups with differing political ideologies, including communists, socialists, and nationalists, to form the Conseil National de la Résistance, CNR. The CNR became the central body overseeing all resistance activities in France, and under its leadership, the resistance movement became a more cohesive and formidable force. They increased their sabotage efforts, attacking German supply lines and military installations with growing regularity. Resistance fighters also provided valuable intelligence to the Allies as they prepared for the invasion of Europe. The price of resistance, persecution and repression. While the French resistance was a source of hope and defiance, it came at a heavy price. The Nazis responded with brutal crackdowns, arresting, torturing, and executing suspected resistance members. The Gestapo, the Nazi secret police, ruthlessly hunted down resistance fighters, and collaborators aided in identifying members of the resistance. One of the most infamous atrocities was the Oradour-sur-Glane massacre in June 1944, when a German SS division slaughtered 642 men, women, and children in retaliation for resistance activities in the region. Entire villages were wiped out as the Nazis sought to terrorize the population and suppress the growing resistance movement. Despite the dangers, the resistance continued to fight. Thousands of French civilians were arrested and deported to concentration camps, where many perished. Yet the spirit of resistance remained strong, even in the face of unimaginable suffering. The liberation of France. The resistance's final role. As Allied forces landed in Normandy on June 6, 1944, the French resistance played a crucial role in the liberation of France. They launched a coordinated uprising against the German occupiers, sabotaging railroads, cutting communication lines, and engaging in direct combat with German forces. In Paris, resistance fighters took control of key buildings and engaged the Germans in street battles before the arrival of the Allied forces. The resistance's efforts, combined with the Allied invasion, eventually led to the liberation of France in August 1944. The courage and determination of the civilian resistance fighters had played a vital role in weakening German control and paving the way for the liberation of their country. Conclusion: a legacy of courage and defiance. The French resistance stands as a testament to the power of ordinary people standing up against tyranny. Despite overwhelming odds, the resistance fought bravely, risking their lives to sabotage the enemy, gather intelligence, and keep the hope of liberation alive. Their courage and sacrifice will never be forgotten. In our next episode, we will explore the resistance movements in Vichy, France, where collaboration and opposition existed side by side. We'll see how the French people continued to resist, even under the government that had aligned itself with Nazi Germany. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next video. Thank you for watching, and as always, stay curious and keep exploring history with us.